Here with reaction, the three former West Point cadets who left the academy amid all of this. Former cadets Hannah McDonald and Nikayla Sampson, who both processed from West Point last month, along with Willow Brown, who left the academy last spring. Willow, you left first. Let's start with you. Tell us your story.
So I went to the academy hoping to serve my country and bring the fight to the enemy. I found myself instead in the classroom learning about how to be more sensitive, and this woke ideology that had taken over West Point really surprised me. So as this vaccine came out, I hesitated and no questions were answered. I figured I was not learning how to better serve my country. I was instead learning about white rage, and I knew I had to leave. The country was becoming less safe. Our students were not learning about Chinese. They were learning about how to be more sensitive, and I thought it was ridiculous.
Well, Hannah and Nikayla, can I ask you both, do you agree with that assessment? Is that accurate? Nikayla?
Yes, sir. This did happen. I don't remember being there in person because I didn't go to these briefs, but I remember talk about these briefs that were happening about white rage and about extremism, and I thought it was ridiculous. It really had nothing to do with bettering yourself as an army officer.
Yeah, and let me ask you, Hannah, is that the same experience you had?
Yes, sir. So I had the privilege of tutoring plebes this semester in English, and I found that a lot of them were writing papers on critical race theory and socialism. And I asked why they were writing these things, and they said they didn't agree with it, but they thought their professors would enjoy it because that was in line with the books they were reading.
Let me ask you all, and I guess, Hannah, I'll start with you. As every single person that I've known in my life that ever went to any of the academies, West Point in particular, they all dreamed of this since the time they were little. It was their lifelong dream. Was that the case with all three of you? I guess we'll ask Hannah first, and Nikayla and Willow.
Yes, sir. So I joined very late in the game. I wasn't aware that the service academies were an option for quite some time. However, growing up in a Christian household and understanding that there's no greater love than to lay down your life for someone else, I was very eager to align those values of service and love with the Army. And I was just very disappointed coming to West Point and realizing that that's not what the Army stood for anymore.
Nikayla, I mean, everybody I know that's ever become a cop or a nurse or a doctor or a teacher, in most cases, these are callings, something they felt compelled to do, they were born to do. Was that how you felt?
Yes, sir. I truly did feel like it was my calling to be an officer, mostly because my father himself was an Army officer. I felt obligated to follow in his footsteps. But when I got there, it didn't turn out like I thought it would or like I planned. I really thought my life was going to be wrapped around West Point for at least the next 4 years and until I graduated, but that's not what happened.
Willow?
Yes, sir. I have a similar experience to Hannah, where I found out about the service academies later into my high school experience, and I was between the Naval Academy and West Point, but ultimately I chose West Point because that's where I felt called to serve and serve in my country's Army for years afterwards. But as Nikayla said, it was just not what I expected.
Let me start with you, Willow, and then Nikayla, and then Hannah. I'll ask you all the same question. Now, your trajectory has changed dramatically. I'm sure that it's pretty traumatic for all of you. It seems like you had made up your decision. As I've been pointing out, many people in the military, nurses, doctors, EMTs, police, firemen, it's not a matter of vax or don't vax. They've made up their minds. Would it have been an option for all three of you to get tested? Would you have gone along? Would you have stayed in the academy? Below.
For me, I would have to say no. Just from my experience in the classroom throughout my time at West Point, I just realized that they were not teaching the same values that I had believed them to. So I left before the official vaccine mandate just because I saw the political indoctrination that was going on, and I knew it wasn't the academy I thought it would be, that I wanted to give the next 10 years of my life to the Army.
Nikayla?
No, sir, I don't think I would have stayed. Same like as Willow said, I don't think I would have been able to stay in a place where I saw something actively changing and I wasn't agreeing with the things that they were teaching anymore. I wasn't agreeing with the things that the Army stood for. They said they stood for the citizen soldier, and I was no longer being treated as a citizen and more like just a soldier. So I wouldn't have stayed.
How about you, Hannah? What would you have done?
No, sir, I would not have stayed. I wasn't just resisting an injection, but I was resisting a kingdom that glorifies ignorant submission and unethical behavior and unlawful orders. And frankly, I was just very upset with the trajectory of our government right now and realizing they didn't want me to lay down my life for my brothers and sisters, but for a political agenda.
Well, first, let me say I've never been called sir this much in my entire life. I hope my kids are watching. Maybe they can learn a thing or two.